Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 258. I'm SS, Steve Smith, and I'm sure people could come up with some better fill in the blank with that SS. We got CA. Give us CA. What's it stand for?
Constantinos Alevizopoulos.
Say that a little bit louder.
Constantinos Alevizopoulos.
At the table. That's going to be a spelling bee. And then we got DA. What's a DA stand for?
David Anderson.
That sounded Greek. Hey, there's a great hockey commercial with Gretzky, and woman doesn't know who he is. I'm sure anybody who's watched a hockey game has seen this. It was on 1,000 times or more. And the woman in the ad says to Gretzky, 3 goals is a hat trick. Gretzky says, good to know. What a great line. But this is going to be a hat trick for us. Wimbledon. We'll talk a little about Wimbledon one more time. Do a few questions at the end. Before we start beating up the Wimbledon players in any manner, I have to always say this is the great late Bud Collins said there's 2 types of tennis players, those who play Wimbledon and those who don't. And if you remember Bud Collins, I just loved it when Donald Dell and Bud Collins were both in the TV booth. And actually, we have to thank Donald Dell because he was mentored by Jack Kramer. Dick Braden was mentored by Jack Kramer. Donald Dell put Dick Braden on TV. PBS, 1970s, the finals on Monday night. The years that the U.S. Open was on clay would have been 75, 76, 77. So they took the grass at Forest Hills. It went to clay. And then Flushing Meadows was in 78. And those 2 were in the booth. But Bud Collins actually, on bad grass, had a win over Virginia Wade, 1977 Wimbledon champion. He won a national mixed doubles title at the open level. He could play, coach at Brandeis, but he used to call everybody a hacker. You fellow hackers. But so yeah, I think he cut it off where you go from being able to play at Wimbledon to being a hacker. But yeah, let's talk about the finals. Why don't you throw something at us, Kostas, and we'll go from there.
So Anisimova against Swiatek. We'll go with the ladies first. I got their head-to-head. Swiatek is up 2-0 in their previous matches. Go the basic stats. Total points 1, 24 for Anisimova, 55 for Swiatek. Service points 1, 13 for Anisimova, 26 for Swiatek. Receiver points 1, 11 for Anisimova, 29 for Swiatek. Then I also found max points in a row, 1, 2 for Anisimova, 13 for Swiatek.
Wow. And she beat Bencic 6-2, 6-0 or 6-0, 6-2.
Yeah, that's correct. 6-2.
6-2, 6-0. And she actually, Bencic won more points in the 6-love set. When he's not confusing, it's totally confusing. With the women's final, match play, Bill Tilden, his first book, match play and spin of the ball. What beats baseline is net. And you have to have options. So very repetitive on these podcasts, but the late Vic Braden, I was at the Easter Bowl the one time, and he said, Steve, they might as well mail in the scores. If Amanda Anisimova is playing Iga Swiatek, Andy Fitzell said, hey, Smith, you finally said something that was worth listening to. It's people are traveling all over the world, but it's 39 feet to the net. Or if Amanda Anisimova was an Army, she has no Air Force. And a Wimbledon finalist. Great player. And I think the 2-0 record is from the pros, but they played more in juniors as well.
I didn't see. I'm sure that's true, yeah.
But no, just different options. The directional changes. Live by the sword, die by the sword. She pulled the trigger and hit certainly winning forehands. Her backhand is technically so good. But the juniors, I mean, they're playing at Wimbledon. We have the utmost respect for them, but that's a low percentage play. you want to play Jim Lair, aggressive percentage tennis. We can go back to some numbers. Dave, what are your thoughts on the women's final?
Well, I think, with Swiatek, I think she was under the radar coming in. And I think for her, that was a good place to be emotionally because she seems like she's been really strung out and struggling, obviously. But to be in that position where maybe in the beginning of it, all eyes were on her, and she did a better job probably of being able to manage your expectations. With Anisimova, that was the first match when I went out there with Ashlyn to WTA 500 in San Jose, and she drew her first round. And I remember vividly because they only have a few minutes, and they certainly had their hits in before. But Anisimova didn't take a volley or an overhead in preparation to play that match first round with Ashlyn.
Did she do that in the warm up? Did she take some volleys and overheads?
No, she didn't take one. Not a volley or overhead.
I thought you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought you meant just the hits before.
No, but she didn't have one, and so. But when she got there a few times, she wasn't far off. It's kind of like you were saying with Sabalenka when she was bowling with Djokovic in that video that was all over social media. But I think that having things and utilizing them under stress, I mean, you got to drill them. You got it's like Navy SEALs preparing to charge a bunker. I mean, they've been through that thing so many times, routine, and if people aren't practicing skills on a daily basis, even if they have them, I think that it's very difficult to bring them out. And hats off to people who can get out there on that hamster wheel, whether it's a junior tennis, hamster wheel or pro tennis, and continue to grow their games in a positive manner, because I don't think it's the norm.
6-0, 6-0. I think everybody's been in that situation. I know the story with Roger Federer where he was interviewed and someone said, you must have won all sorts of matches 6-0, 6-0. Can't remember which book I read this in, but he said, no, but I remember losing 6-0, 6-0. And they interviewed the person who beat Roger 6-0, 6-0. I'm always, telling juniors, okay, I hold up 4 fingers and 2 fingers and say, if you win 4 points out of 6 consecutively, you win 6-0, 6-0. If you could just improve 1 more point out of 6, you improve 17%. And you go from losing 6-0, 6-0 to being dead even. So I think, people do get in that rut. I do think the commentators, I agree that she was exhausted. And big ball striker. But, I heard Chris Evert say she's a hitter. And, so much situational training. But she's young, she's been around forever. She's only 23. But, she doesn't play doubles. I mean, that's pretty much a given. I'm just assuming that she doesn't play doubles. Almost none of the top players do. It's 20% of the purse, and you just have to split that. But how's it go? Vic Braden used to say about the men's tournaments, the futures. If you're playing 3 years later, you're playing futures. You have no future. But that reason that comes to my mind is very common at the future level on the men's side, that people don't take volleys or overheads. Okay? I'm not coming up there anyway. The idea of coming in with green light points, but that's a crossover even to the men's. We'll get to the men's, but I also think Swiatek comes to mind. I share this all the time with her mental toughness coach. High standards and low expectations. Just high standards of work ethic. My son Connor was in Germany, and I should know her last name, Severev. Won a lot of doubles with Gigi Fernandez.
Mm-hmm.
And Connor said, you ever heard of her? I said, yeah, she got to the finals of the French Open. And he's like, really? I go, yeah, she's a great player. He goes, how'd she do? I go, well, don't take anything away from my comment. She's a great player, because she's a great player. But she lost to Graf 0-0 in the French Open final.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it just spirals out of control. But that expression, you always change a losing game. Just say hit a body serve for for her to hit wide serves, and, thinking of Graf, Swiatek and Graf, their games are totally different. But if you look at old film of Graf, Swiatek, it's like a ditto as far as footwork is concerned.
Yeah, they move so well.
The movement with, but momentum. If she had got it going, that's a sign of a really, really good player. I've said that before. Say it quite often. If you're watching someone play and they're down 5-love, a junior tennis player, and then they say, they're serving. It's good. Love 5. They tell anybody who's courtside just knows love 5. They announce the score. That's some kid. That's a kid who doesn't really have a problem with insecurities. They're not worried about what other people are thinking. And I think she was so nice, Amanda, where she said, "Well, I wish I could have given you a better show," referring to the audience worldwide. I mean, just the stadium itself. But I mean, to just play Wimbledon, obviously, what a great tennis player someone has to be. But to actually be in the finals, we'll give something else, Costas, on the women's final.
Cool. We'll go over serve stats. Aces, 0 for Anisimova, 2 for Swiatek. Double faults, 5 for Anisimova, 2 for Swiatek. First serve percentages, 19 out of 42, which is about 45% for Anisimova. 29 out of 37, 73% for Swiatek. Then we got first serve percentage points 1, 5 out of 19 for Anisimova. That's 26%. 21 out of 29 for Swiatek. That's 72%. And then second serve points 1, 8 out of 23. That's 35% for Anisimova. 5 out of 8 for Swiatek. That's 63%. And then Anisimova had 0 break points, whereas Swiatek converted 6 out of 9. That's for the serve. Anisimova had a pretty bad day on the serve.
Yeah. With going through it with a class on a rainy day, we did some points from the women's match and the men's match. And we just, we call it a language. The GreatBase is a language. It's a system of systems. Dave, you were there in the 1980s. We had a tennis teaching program, college degree, and had a lab. And the 8 pillars were people that were helping us or helping me as the director. Red, yellow, green. The first time I read that was in Clarence Mabry's book. It was called the John Newcomb Family Tennis Book. So then he just goes and we took there's a Burwash concept, DNO, defensive, neutral, offensive. So Anisimova is not as fast, and she's going to football. And it's amazing now. A lot of American kids, they don't know anything about football. Offense, defense, turnovers, fumble, interception. And I ask kids those questions. What's it mean? Three things can happen when you throw a football. 2 of them are bad. One's really bad. And, completion, incompletion, and an interception. So those type of things would help somebody with their mentality. So the quarterback, not to scramble. There's a girl up here from Canada who's very fast and has big upside potential. And I told her, every time you're scrambling out there and people think, wow, a great get, that's a super point. It's because usually you made a bad decision. That's why you're scrambling. Chris Everett, who's in the booth, we always say he's 34 feet. Very quickly, 82 and a half going cross court. The intersection of the service line and the sideline, 65.9. The math is not clean on this, but it gives you a ballpark on that. So you take the 82 and a half to 83, 65.9 to 66. The difference is 17 feet. So 17 feet one way, 17 feet the other way to hit through the court. So next thing, the DNO, percentage post comes from Jack Kramer's high school geometry teacher. I used to call it the safe spot. Braden called it the 4x4. Aim for that inside corner in the baseline, 4x4. Predetermined target, decision by decision. You're certainly not going to get a bad call on the sideline. You're not giving your opponent an angle. And, but for them to just know, okay, the path of the racket, path of the target, like a Connors who could play a side spin forehand. And just like Kramer, I asked Welby Van Horn one time, you're playing Kramer and you hit short, what do? He said, you just turn to the ball boy and say, what's the score? Because they're playing the approach shot. Again, Jack Grapple, where all this comes from. I don't know where Jack picked this up. We were both spoon-fed by Braden at the same time. The approach shot is the money shot. The volley is a cash-in shot. You can look at the numbers. Do you have net appearances?
No, I couldn't find net appearances. I could find like volley winners.
How many winners?
Swiatek had 1 volley winner and Anisimova had 0.
So one volley winner. How many points were played total?
55 plus 24, 79.
79 points, 1 volley, Wimbledon final. So, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, but when we have juniors watching this, we're saying actually the information that we're sharing, and it's public domain. People really to research where do we get the information. But I think it's an unknown for the most part. Fact-based instruction, tennis, math. I mean, if you don't serve volley, you don't serve volley. But it's just amazing to me. And I'm listening to Andy Roddick on his podcast today and love listening to him. He's talking to Chris Eubanks, and the ball is hit. The points are, very, very fast. The ball striking, say if it's 2 times faster. That's where when kids look at old film, they become disrespectful because it's just so slow. The discussion, well, the great athletes, and no doubt, like we'll get to the men's match, but when people do come to the net, it's like there's no intent. They're not thinking volleys. Do you have any numbers on overheads hit?
No, 0 overheads.
I'm sorry, 0 overheads.
And
we're talking Wimbledon final.
Yeah.
Dave, your turn.
Yeah, I mean, it's, to me, and it's more difficult to come up with those net advances versus volleys, and because so many points by a lot of the players we're watching on TV, and especially these two in particular that played in the women's final. I mean, I've said it before, they don't want to get to the other side of the yellow zone. I mean, truthfully, and so, they're taking, high risk, in not maybe in basketball terms in 3-point land, but they're a little inside the 3-point land, taking high risk cracks at it. And you've said it a million times, as we all have, and it comes down to controlling time and space. And a lot of the players that we talk about in today's world, just try to take the time away, not really with anything other than just sheer ball speed. And then they don't really take the space away. And, they don't transition in a way where they're just looking to shrink the court for the opponent. Like everything else, if you don't build something at an early stage in the skill sets and then build it in terms of the repetition, it's just not going to be there. And in a way, it's kind of a shame. I hate to say this, but if Iga had done poorly here in the semis or finals, and maybe it would have forced her to even really dig deeper into some areas of her game that she's going to need to round out. But because no doubt that Federer made Rafa better and vice versa, and they pulled Djokovic up and made all of them kind of made each other a little bit better. I'm not sure I see that happening completely in the women's side right now.
Yeah, we'll get to the men's side, but one thing that Djokovic said about Carlos Alcaraz is that he's got the best of all three. Talked about he mentioned the fight of Nadal, the finesse of Federer, and the basics of himself. I think it's more the money and just the way tennis has gone versus the rackets. Certainly the rackets are a factor, but years ago, the top players played all 3 events at Wimbledon. And, Martina Navratilova, Billie Jean King. I saw Billie Jean King play at Wimbledon. Oh, my word. Arthur Ashe used to call her the old lady. again, not to be disrespectful, but no one's even close on the tour today to how Billie Jean King played from the service line in. Not even close. But so people don't play doubles. Joel Trucker, great tennis mind, said if you start going at the net at age 15, it's like learning a third language. So we had 16 players today just working on doubles for the most part all day, I'd say, and we did all sorts of things: throw, catch, hot potato. You throw it like a baseball, end up in a body balance position, come in 1, 2, 3 split, and you're tossing underhand. You're moving your feet. Then have the players on the other side. They just get a racket, and then you have to toss a ball to their forehand. And they're hitting it with Welby Van Horn balance and checking the checkpoints. And that's how you teach little kids to play doubles. And it's okay. Now we're doing it. We're just tossing to the backhand volleys, and you just build. And then this is a bird watch drill. It was from the service line. Rallies just tap the ball 6 times up the middle, and then go to the net and tap volleys. Just tap 6 in a row to the middle, to the middle, to the middle. And Harry Hopman used to have people do a drill for 3 hours. And you can't change the drill every 7 minutes because the kids are bored. And so anyway, one of the girls had played college tennis, and I said, by the group of the 4 best players, actually there weren't the 4 best players, but a kid here from Japan, and he certainly would be better than say the top 4 players on that one court. But it was the best group of 4 overall. And I just said, do you think tennis looks like that anymore? I mean, they were just like, boom, so they were just playing feed to the middle, return to the middle, volley to the middle, played out. And you could do it with no lobs. You can do it with you can't hit the ball hard. But the thing is what ruins it is people want to win at all levels. They just want to win, and they don't want to develop. So we do things, okay, do it slowly. You're not doing it for score. We did a thing today where I remember on an interim basis coaching a college tennis team with you, Dave, and you couldn't serve to the backhand, whistle blows, points over. But we were doing it today that if you could just spin your serve in, no poaching, automatic return cross court, make your first serve, make your first volley, and then you can play the point out. Because if you can play 2 shots in doubles on the serve, if you can make one return and then to go forward, but the players don't have the instincts to do that. Tell you a very quick story. 2 college coaches, Dave Secker and Chad Berryhill. So they meet each other for the first time. Berryhill's been around us longer than Secker. And Chad Berryhill said, "You ruined it. Did Smith ruin it for you too?" And Secker thought it was a falling out. He goes, "Oh, you don't get along with Smith?" And he said, No, I get along great with Smith. He goes, but he ruined it for me. Didn't he ruin it for you? He goes, "What are you talking about? You can't watch tennis and enjoy it anymore. If you really have a handle on the information, yeah, there is that side. Yeah, I mean, I love watching, but in the very best, just think no options. It's like one year, Novak Djokovic was having a bad day at the office. He's playing Sam Querrey. He didn't have plan B. Now, he certainly has improved so much, but when the trophy was handed out, maybe I said that last week, but during one of the interviews, Djokovic is being interviewed. Roger Federer's in the roll box, and he said, "Well, I wish I could play some shorter points." And then it's like, did America get that? Anybody in U.S. tennis get that? Around the world, for that matter. He did the same thing one time when he was accepting the trophy. Rod Laver's courtside said, "Mr. Laver, I know I'm supposed to come to the net more. I'm working on it." But it's really become a lost art. It's great, the story of her taking some time off, and her father was the force behind her tennis. He died, I think, at age 52, and I put a message into Max Fomin. I haven't connected with him, a little telephone tag, but he worked with her when she was younger. I saw him recently in Miami. It's great, but Dave, you were asking me last week, one of these sessions on Wimbledon, who would I like to coach?
Yeah.
I was telling the the students in the class today. I said, this might sound really off the wall, but I'm very, very confident I have a lot more information than would hear if she's watching the telecast. Hats off to everybody involved with her tennis to be a Wimbledon finalist. But then the thing is, it's just so difficult to get someone who's a really good tennis player to trust a coach, because once someone starts to become really good, say at 10 years old, they go out to play a weekend tournament and the merchants of flesh are there. Everybody, like, I'm politically incorrect to say that, but almost everybody, they're looking to coach a winner. They're looking to be that third base coach and say, they're not trying to just teach another group of beginners. But let's go one more time with you, Costas. Anything on the women's match?
We could go over winners, unforced errors.
Yeah.
We'll go over the winners real fast. Total winners for Anisimova, 8, 4 on the forehand, 4 on the backhand, 0 at the net. 10 winners for Swiatek, 1 on the forehand, 6 on the backhand, 1 on the volley. Then we had unforced errors, total for Anisimova, 28, 14 on the forehand side, 9 on the backhand side. And then we had 11 total unforced errors for Swiatek, 8 on the forehand side, 1 on the backhand side. On the return, first serve return points, Anisimova made 8 out of 29. Swiatek made 14 out of 19. That's about 27% for Anisimova, 73% for Swiatek. And then second serve points, 3 out of 8 for Anisimova. That's 37%. And 15 out of 23 for Swiatek. That's 65%. Just general errors, forced errors, probably that's what they meant. Was total for Anisimova 17 and 5 for Swiatek.
Now, one thing, if juniors were to listen to just this segment of the podcast, or parents were to say that to the juniors, just take this one segment, then take pencil to paper, you could take your computer, just push pause again, and write those numbers down. Stats are not everything, but numbers can tell a story. Here's a story. If people want to go backwards, Costas was a guest on our podcast, called me up, started talking to him several times. And I said, hey, we should share this story on our podcast. You say Bakan, like the late Vic Braden. Vic was very shy, and he said that he did that because Bakan's down the line. Brad Gilbert will say Bakans. But so you went back and listened to our podcast with Costas. He was taught out of videotapes more so than the books, right? But with your coach.
Yeah.
But yeah, go back, through those numbers. It's very simple. You got to reduce unforced errors and increase the opportunity to force. And then the movement is Swiatek was definitely making, and she was pressuring, like say, I used to say it all the time through when I work with Bill Jacobson, CompuTennis. Navratilova, Sampras, aggressive net rushers. Graf and Agassi, now husband and wife, aggressive baseliners, but they're aggressive. So she wasn't just pushing balls back. And you could, some of the angles that you can see on YouTube, the way they were hitting the ball, a lot of pace, but the consistency. But yeah, the movement was a big part of it. The numbers, though. Anything else?
No, that's pretty much for the women's side.
Go ahead, Dave. Why don't you wrap it up with the women and we can talk about the men?
Well, when you're running through the numbers there, it always reminds me of one of my favorite drills that I've talked about here, the bucket drill, where to have kids chart either pro matches or kids, and they just take the 3 buckets, and as they're charting, they're dropping a ball in the winner bucket or the unforced error bucket or the forced error bucket. Because I think it's very important that people understand the game of tennis isn't really going to change for us, and inevitably at the end of the set, you almost need to get a bigger bucket for the unforced error category in a particular level of play that we deal with. And there's small drops in the winner category. And, I just love to do that drill. And it would have been fun to do that drill watching the women's final too, with a group of kids, because, it just tells the tale. But I feel like perception is reality for people. And they often perceive it like the game is just being, constantly played with the production of winners. And they don't see a lot of the little things maybe that we see behind the scenes of a tennis point.
With charting, you chart to get objective data on how to practice. Roger Federer was asked, do you look at charts? And he said, only at Wimbledon, before the press is ready to ask questions, they put the stats in front of us, and he looks through those. Follow-up question, you think at that time as coach, it was Paul Anico. I said, do you look at stats? No, Federer goes, no, we just kind of go on hunches. But then in 2017, Tony Gotzik got him to use analytics. And Roger Federer used to run around his backhand to hit his forehand in the roughest forehand. It's picked up on a live mic. Means people weren't supposed to hear it. Uncle Tony said, it's pretty hard to say anything negative about Federer. I can't believe how dumb he's playing. Then Djokovic comes along. Like Gilbert said about Agassi, backhand's a gift from God. Djokovic's backhand. And that's one thing, too, that Djokovic, he stays in the pocket, going back to the quarterback, not scrambling on the baseline, putting themselves out of position. We'll talk about that with the men's match. But then Fed said, my father was always right. It was just chicken hit my backhand. You could listen to the pros, Edberg coaching them, and are you going to come to the net like Edberg? Yeah, I would if I could volley like him. But the juniors watch that. It's just so powerful. And then people hear this serve +1. And we just go further and further downhill with people be able to play off the court. Before we got in line, Dave asked me about a player we've worked with who's won some national titles and represented the U.S. and still young. And I told her last week, I said, remember, you're an offensive baseliner. You're not an all-court player. Because if you don't play all over the court, you don't play all over the court. Growing up as a kid in a Canadian border town, CBC at that time, Howie Meeker, in between the first and second period, they're trying to educate the youth on how to play hockey better. I don't really think that people are watching tennis in the United States, and there's too much edifying of the pros. But even going back to the nice guy Arthur Ashe, like Pancho Gonzalez and Jack Kramer, they would say, what are they doing? And it just makes me wonder, you see Billie Jean King, she's sitting next to Martina. Martina at one time said, yeah, I play mixed doubles. It's still real doubles. Jim Klein sent me a text message. He said doubles went downhill when Martina had a new partner, Kuznetsova. Yeah.
Kuznetsova,
yeah. And, she was playing one up, one back. And I remember, did she really pick her as a partner? And now the toughest thing in tennis, toughest thing in doubles, if you play serve and volley, is to find another partner who serve and volley. We have one girl who won nine gold balls, and everybody she played with played one up, one back. It's just amazing. With another line from Andy Roddick, not Andy Roddick, a little better player, Andy Fitzel, said, you like where I said, well, if your game was the Army, you have no Air Force. They're trying to drop bombs off the serve for sure. But, you hit a really good serve. 3 things can happen, and they're all good. Ace, you force them into the air off the return, and then they hit a weak shot. But the serve +1, Matt Clores had a lot to do with the last 15, 20 years. The position he has with the USTA is access to lots of film. Ben Shelton is dropping bombs. But, how often does he come in behind that serve and hit a volley? You got Isner and Query now with their podcast, and they're self-deprecating. Isner, serving out of a tree. I heard where Darren Cahill said to help center with his serve. They've been watching film of Isner. What a compliment, because he did have a great motion, fluid. Toss out to the right, way out in front, and to be courtside and see with it's like his second serve. I one time was working with Austin Krajicek on tabletop returns. Worked with him a bunch when he was a kid, and he's at Bollettieri, so incognito. He's down there on a full scholarship, but I'm, just an hour and a half up the road where he lived in the Tampa area. So we're working on tabletop returns. He's playing against Karlovic. When those guys hit a second serve, I mean, it's just amazing. Where I'm either going to stand 20 feet back, or I got to stand in close and, a la Jimmy Connors, is just attack that serve like it's a volley with an added follow through. But closing comment on the women's match, Dave. Anything?
No, I think. I mean, somebody asked, if you were coaching Anisimova. I mean, it's a approach it one of two ways. I mean, for a short time, either just the old football analogy, throw away the film, and then maybe the other flip side is, throw the kid a big party because and celebrate getting to the finals, and that was more just of a kind of a philosophical kind of viewpoint on it all. And hats off to him. I mean, like you said, I didn't play Wimbledon, and to be in the Wimbledon final, and I think the quicker she moves on from that experience and probably gleans the positives out of it, and hopefully she's around people who can get something out of that and continue to round her out.
Paul Roeder, his father was the Davis Cup captain of the Dutch Davis Cup team, and PhD in biomechanics. He was a gopher for Gideon Ariel. I was a gopher for Vic Braden at the same time. High level positions with the USTA. And I remember telling him, you don't want the Sam Querreys of the future to just be able to finesse volleys. And, now he's got this podcast and they're laughing at each other who had the worst backhand volley. But, when a guy or a gal's making $20,000 a week, one, not only they're suspicious that anybody and everybody wants to coach them, but they're really fearful of going backwards. Vic Braden, how many steaks can you eat? Is, you're making money. Now, again, we'll get to the men's tennis. Taylor Fritz, 4 in the world, starts the point so well on the serve return. He doesn't really have the right grip to have the best forehand return, but it is a short, compact swing. He can just stay in the rally, but just like a Francis Tiafoe, like a Ben Shelton, top Americans. I think those 3 are in the top 10 right now. Maybe Tommy Paul might be outside that a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, those guys are way up there, top 20. It used to be said that you're a complete player if you can finish at the net. That now means you're from Finland. It's like, come on, you only go to the net to shake hands, pick up balls. Now you can, we've got 16 clay courts here. It's like, well, some places you don't even have to sweep from the service line in. Nobody went up there. That's serve +1 though. I just hear that, and it's just like when you have kids that are playing at the developmental grassroots level, and they're trying to do that. It's really a disservice for junior tennis players to listen to what they're saying about pro tennis. It's not working. It's not working. But on the men's side, same thing, staying in the pocket. Andres Barbosa sent me a clip. It was in Spanish, but he translated for me, where Alcaraz yelled to his box, I can't stay with him backcourt to backcourt. And he started that the first set with an ace, and the second set went downhill. But the numbers to me, center was 75% at the net, points won, but he came in almost twice as much. Why don't you rattle off a few numbers from the men's match?
Total points 125 for Sinner, 113 for Alcaraz. Service points 181 for Sinner, 77 for Alcaraz. Receiver points 144 for Sinner, 36 for Alcaraz. Max points in a row, 6 for Sinner, 5 for Alcaraz. Then just the serve stats, 8 aces for Sinner, is that a 5? Yeah, a 15 for Alcaraz. Double faults, 2 for Sinner, 7 for Alcaraz. First serve percentages, 72 out of 116. That was 62% for Sinner. 64 out of 121, 53% for Alcaraz. The first serve points won, 54 out of 72 for Sinner. That's 75%. 48 out of 64, 75% for Alcaraz too. And the second serve points won, 27 out of 44, 61% for Sinner. 29 out of 57, that's 51% for Alcaraz. And then break points won, 4 out of 9 for Sinner, 2 out of 6 for Alcaraz. I found another one. Max games won in a row, 3 for Sinner, 4 for Alcaraz. Winners, total winners for Sinner, 36. Out of those, forehand was 15 from the forehand side, 13 from the backhand side, and then 7 through his volleys or up at the net. And then for Alcaraz, 35 winners. Out of those, 10 were from the forehand side, 10 from the backhand side, and then 5 were at the net. I'll go over the unforced errors. Total unforced errors, 40 for Sinner, 19 on the forehand side, 19 on the backhand side, 2 at the net. Alcaraz, 36 total, 19 from the forehand side, 10 from the backhand side, 1 at the net. First serve return points, 26 out of 64. 25, that's 25%, 18 for Sinner. And then second serve return points, 28 out of 57. Out of 57, correct, sorry. And then for Alcaraz, it was 18 out of 72. That's 25% on the first serve return. And then 17 out of 44. That's 38% for the second serve for Alcaraz again. I didn't find this for the women. I did find it for the men. This is kind of from the passion I have for football.
Soccer,
sorry. In soccer, they used to always measure like how much players would run, and you could see the players who ran the most. So I found that Sinner ran a little over 0.3 miles. And then
0.3 miles.
Yeah.
0.3 of a mile.
So it was just in a meter, it was 521 meters.
For the entire match.
For the entire match.
I think you have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay. I'll look it up.
Keep going.
And then Alcaraz ran pretty much close to 0.3 miles for the total match. And then it's about 46 feet per point on average, and then 43 feet. So for Sinner, and then 43 feet per point for Alcaraz.
If you go back to the French match, it was 5 hours and 29 minutes. That expression, it's a marathon of sprints. But in total, so you're saying that you ran 0.3 of a mile.
Yeah, all the distance they ran through a point.
Through
if
a
you add-
point.
if you add it up.
Okay,
Yeah,
for a
sorry.
point. Okay, yeah, for a
Yeah,
point.
not like if they include the between points and that, but like
Yeah.
if you measure, yeah.
Well, for our listeners, though, on a rainy day, junior tennis players to stop and think. Thought's your most powerful tool. It's always good to hear a percentage, but just go back to, I think, your previous page. 125 points to 113. The point differential. And that's a 12-point difference. So the match was very, very close. What was Soderling's first name from Sweden? Robin Soderling.
Robin, yeah.
So one time he plays the Fed. The Fed wins in 3 sets, and everybody's going, he won comfortably. The point differentiation was 7 points for the match. That's one thing about the scoring system years ago. Do some homework on that. It was so the elite, the commoners would not play. Let's have the scoring system be to keep tennis a garden party and keep it social and keep it for the elitists. That's one theory on why the scoring system is so complicated. 15 love, 40 all and such. But a kid can get beat, breadstick and a bagel, and they're very, very competitive. These are names from the past. Ryan Simi played at Notre Dame. His father was a shortstop at the same college that I went to. And years later, he's playing Clayton Stanley. He was 12. Clayton got beat badly, but Clayton was a bright kid, and he got 39% of the points. So, you're getting 40% of the points. I mean, that's A-okay. How can you make that up? I'd like to do this. So say the points were 60-40, and you just on a whiteboard, chalk talk, and most junior programs, they don't have a classroom setting. For the people that are in the business of tennis, find a way to have your students stay another 30 minutes a day. So besides the on-court and the off-court, on-court for technique and tactics and match play, the off-court for fitness. But you got to have a classroom. You got to have a think tank. Look what they do in basketball in this country or in football. But what happens? So you take a board, and so one number is 60, the other one's 40. So you just go 59, 41, 58, 42, 57, 43. And where did you lose those points? And that expression, coming back to, they're not playing green zone. So Paul Wardlaw, his book is on our podcast or our website for free. He was on as a guest. Ideally, if you lose, you're going to lose in a point-ending situation. It starts early. Gretchen Rush is up here. She played Wimbledon 20 times. She was listening to a lecture the other day. We had a lot of rain up here in the afternoon. And at one time at the 12 and under nationals, we've charted incognito. No one knew what we were doing. Just made it a project. It was Christo Schultz, who I sent to your place, Dave, after he was with us. Yeah. Bud, his dad was on as a guest. Great story. 39 in the world, played Division III tennis. But we charted 1,000 overheads at the 12s. 1,000 points. I shouldn't say 1,000 overheads. 1,000 points, and there's 7 overheads hit. That's national tennis. So people fear they would do what they can do to win at an early age. So listeners, at little kid tennis and big kid tennis, there's a big difference. But now we're all the way to Wimbledon. It's like they got little kid tactics. And, again, in the booth, I think there's way too much edifying the very top players. I hate to even bring this up, but this is a dark cloud that the 2 Wimbledon champions had a drug suspension. To whitewash tennis at our level, the grassroots level, on these podcasts. Maybe we'll do this in the second 5 years. Is just be totally, honest. When you're totally honest, people think you're being negative. But tennis at the grassroots level, developmental tennis, we need the tennis police. I think right away people will turn to the USTA. Well, they're the governing body of tennis. They do this with umpires. They pay people to go around the country and see who are the really top umpires, and they make it to the U.S. Open. They're watching you, work the lines. They're watching you work the chair, and then how do you get to the U.S. Open? We need to have the tennis police. The GreatBase, we're helping the people who are in front of us, and so are you, Dave. And around the world, people are mistaught every day. They're given bad information. Today, listening to two professionals talk about, based on the strings, people can come over the ball faster. It's like, is anybody regulating what anybody's saying? But that match, 125, 113. But excuse me, Alcaraz is so good, but he has the skills. You would never convince me. Just think of going to the grave. Would a Jack Kramer, would he say, yeah, okay, we're going to go with more drop shots and approach shots? But Braden, you got to trust your volley, trust your overhead. You got to volley. You got to value volley. You have to value volleying position. That was a tongue twister for me. The math, 130 degrees. Then so people don't understand the geometry. They don't understand statistics. That aggressive air margin from Jacobson. You win 2 out of 3. Come on. How many times you got to hear it? 4 out of 6, 8 out of 12, 16 out of 24. But people in our sport, year round, they don't train to play Wimbledon. They're kids coming up, but even people on the pro tour, going to try to get on grass more. But even doing situational drills, that would force you just to have kids go out and play. We could play one bounce singles. Serve underhand. A kid we worked with just won a futures tournament playing doubles. His dad sent me a thank you note. I remember he's played baseball, big guy, 6'5", plays at BYU. I had him say, okay, you're serving underhand, you got to go to the net. Didn't like the drill. He's just from baseball, he's just got a huge serve. High altitude tennis, he beat the junior Wimbledon champion a couple years ago. And he was a guy who played mostly baseball growing up. Go ahead, Dave, men's match.
Yeah, the biggest thing that jumped out at me watching the match and then going through some of the numbers prior to this, and I think that it was poorly coached for sure on Alcaraz's end. I mean, when I go out to junior tournaments and if I yell good shot, I mean, somebody's jumping on me about coaching. To have 18 people sitting in a box and nobody volunteering information about, hey, you got to start getting up in the court and playing the kind of tennis that you're capable of playing all over the court to Alcaraz. It baffled me, to say the least. And then when Alcaraz was on the bench and pleading his case to Pereiro and his team, I mean, he was answering his own question. And I just really have a problem with the coaching on the courts. I mean, I think it's making our sport weaker and culturally, and it doesn't have much room to get weaker. But I mean, to me, that was really, I think people think there's such a magic to it. To me, it was really bush league job of if you could communicate court level with a player like that and not make the proper adjustments to give him, a chance to get. I mean, I think he would have easily made up the 12 points personally. I may be wrong, but I think that tactically from that end, and Rafa did the same thing to Fed a few years where, they throughout the entire fortnight. I mean, Rafa, his numbers going forward exceeded Fed's pretty significantly. And to me, that just doesn't make sense. And this kind of reminded me of that.
With, it's interesting. At a lower level, much lower, Raven Klaassen is playing Rajiv Ram, singles, futures level, and he loses. And I'm just talking to him on the phone. I said, don't tell me, Klaassen, that you served and stayed back on the second serve and you let him get his nose over the net. And he goes, yeah, I did. I said, well, don't ever do that again. You're more athletic. I love Ram, how composed he is. I mean, it's great for the game. Hopefully he has a leadership role in tennis after, especially the Indian population here in the U.S. that is playing tennis. Such a cool cat. But, I just know that Raven did quite well after that. It said, no, it's like years ago, Nastasi was playing Cliff Drysdale. And Cliff Drysdale, still, he's still commentating. I think he's 82 years old. There's a fun joke years ago this is when he was in his 60s. What's Cliff Drysdale? What's his wife do? High school. Because, charming guy and the ladies loved him. And so anyway, it's great. He's still out there chipping away. He's on TV. So he's playing Nastasi, starts to come in on his second serve. He starts to come on his first serve. Nastasi starts waving his fingers. No. You cannot do that. You have to wait for the ball to bounce. I come in first now. So Nastasi changed it, started serving volley, told the whole world what he's going to do. Those are the rules. You have to wait for the ball to bounce. The server can be in flight. So Raonic is over in France, the big Canadian. He was a finalist at Wimbledon. And I think this is a story people need to hear over and over again. Is a coach said to him, hey, you can't say idiot. You can say you're being idiotic, being politically correct. Is that he's trying to drop bombs and he's playing a futures tournament. And the guy goes, no, just spin your serve in. You're here to learn to play from the backcourt. But I think with Carlos, the smile on his face, he's so positive, he's so respectful. But I think also, even on center's side, there's a lot of similarities between the men's match, even though it was, obviously very close, but the tactics, even though Swiatek, he wins, beating Benchik 6-2, 6-0, 6-0, 6-0. That's 24 games out of 26. And but as good as she is, it's like Chris Evert said to Novak one time, you're winning convincingly. Don't you think you could work your way to net a little bit? What's going on with the UTR, and if you lose more than 6 games, or now where kids don't play a third set. Years ago, people would say, yeah, in the first round, it's going to experiment a little bit. I know in that first round, there's no way I'm losing. If I lose the first set, sometimes you'd even want to do that. Like Arantes in his book, Manuel Arantes, he would say to work on my passing shots, I'd hit really soft serves. Because you want the person to come in. Who thinks like that? It's so much win-win-win. And, that's where people are programmed out. They're not, juniors don't call up adults. We don't have any junior versus veteran matches. But no, I think it's a crisis. The Wimbledon final, and certainly it wasn't a spectacular match between Sinner and Carlos at Wimbledon as it was at the French. But yeah, just the tactics. In pro sports, you have assignments. Some football players, they never even get to touch the ball. They play a whole year and not even touch the ball, but they have an assignment. They have a huddle, play by play, and they have patterns. And I was just, just amazed. Like again, going back to Sabalenka, in the match with that match went so much better because she got into the match. I do think in Pete Sampras's book, he said there's choking, but there's also freezing. I think Amanda Anisimova, I think she got locked up. She froze. She got to the point where she wasn't even choking. And that's like, okay, how can you get into the match? We tell juniors that all the time. The first game, one in the warm up, feed the ball up the middle. What's better, their forehand or backhand? But just let them know. Break sweat. When you walk around the net post first time, your t-shirt's already wet. You've let them know. Even if you're not a baseliner, you let them know that you can stay in that rally. We tell people you just got to love playing. And I don't like the term pusher. I reprimand juniors for saying that. You're playing a defensive specialist, but just stay back, beat them at their own game. But winners are winners. Swiatek, if she was, a lot of creative drills were thrown her way. Obviously, she doesn't want to lose her strengths, her core and what has got her to where she is. She's obviously phenomenal. But the mind and the mobility are there, the mechanics. She's actually improved her serve. She's improved her ability at the net. But to have, this is for listeners, maybe not necessarily for the, one of the best players in the world, but do people do creative training? And we talk about it all the time. You can go out and play. Okay, just go play sets where you serve and volley. Play no ad tennis. Play best of 5. I mean, if you have people, they both are crashing the net. Say, go play a set. They can play 5 sets in the morning practice. Let's wrap it up. I know we'll just do this and go to a different format next week. I know we'll go a question or two. But anything else on the men's match?
No, those are the basic stats I found.
Okay.
It was harder than I thought to find statistics.
One thing with stats is it's amazing. You have to really dig, and we're so busy doing this, that, and the other thing. Is how many net appearances there were, and that's very confusing. Was it a net appearance when they just blasted the ball and they really didn't get that far into the court? A net appearance to us is if you're in front of that 10.5-foot mark, halfway between the service line and the net, that's a green zone point. But you said 1 volley in the women's final?
Yeah, and then on the men's, it was, I think, 7 and 5.
Yeah, 7 and 5 on the winners. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 and 5.
How many volleys and overheads? Did you have that?
No, I didn't find that.
But the number's low. The number's low. For me, I tell parents all the time. I said, your child has played tournament tennis well over 5 years now. Well over 5 years, and they haven't served and volleyed 5 times, singles or doubles. Singles or doubles. What's your buddy from high school's name? Aristotle. So, how's it go? Excellent. Excellence is not an act; it's a habit.
Yeah.
And if you don't serve volley, you don't serve volley. If you don't play approach shots, you don't play approach volley. So we were watching this men's match with rainy day, and just how many balls. We call it the Air Force. Your Army. Fitzel told me he likes that line too. I don't get too many compliments from Fitzel. So, the ball's floating up there like a wounded duck. This is a men's final. And come in, play a conventional approach volley. For people to say, no one will ever volley like Sampras again, how dumb can that be? I mean, we have kids, we toss balls on their hand, call it 8 to be great. Forehand volley, backhand volley. You look across the court, and they're all gliding in, the elbows raised in that forehand volley, the racket faces vertical, the body and racket match each other going in on the same plane. But then when they play, they're just going through the motions. Okay, they want us to do 8 to be great again. And sometimes we say 9 to be fine, where it's a forehand volley, 2-handed backhand volley, and a 1-handed backhand volley. And they're moving, and they're toss it right to their volley, put it right in their hands. But then when they play, they don't, forced teaching, it works. Okay, you're going to play a set, you have to play inside the baseline. It'll force you to play on the rise. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, not really related to the final, but some of the things you were talking about, creative and cooperative and competitive drilling to bring out the best in people. And I think it's a missing link for sure in junior tennis throughout the country. And that's why we're seeing so much one-dimensional play down the road in so many people. And like I said, I feel like there could have been just minor adjustments on the men's side of that match. But I mean, listen, Sinner's hitting 85 miles an hour. I don't think I've hit a serve 85 miles an hour. He's hitting his average forehand and backhand at that speed. And but I think that, you hear that a lot out on the junior circuit, when they get overpowered, and the kids always try to fight fire with fire instead of using a little different tactic and you can slow the game down. I really enjoyed going back even and listening to Dave Sievertson talk about tennis when we had him on, and because the guy has a way of taking people out of their games, and I think that I tell everybody to listen to every podcast, but kids that are struggling with the kind of things that I feel like Anna Smova ran into when you're getting overrun, I think she could listen to Dave Sievertson's podcast and take a lot out of it if she was open-minded.
No, it's all great input. we tell people don't have the off factor. If you have the off factor, you think someone is so awesome that you can't do what they're doing. I know that a lot of people would listen to us, and because we Howard Cosell, Jockocracy. If you didn't play the game, you have no right to talk about the game. And the players throw that in your face all the time. With they would tell us to go to Section F and eat some popcorn. But no, Carlos has the ability to be able to hit that underspin backhand. He's not floating it. Stay in early. Make sure that you don't hit it. You can't hit it. You can't hit angle on that. You got to hit through the middle. I thought it was great. The tribute to Arthur Ashe. In a lot of ways, it seems like it was yesterday, but I was a newbie in tennis at that time. When he beat Connors, so many people were in on that. Talking to Neil Fraser, who passed away recently, great Australian. A lot of people gave Arthur advice, and they said, slow it down against Jimmy Connors. Slow it down. I don't know if I mentioned this last week. I know we would get off of Wimbledon, but Bob Brett, short term, was working. The late Bob Brett was an Aussie, a disciple of Harry Hopman's. He was working with Robbie Seguso. He's playing. This is where Seguso, he beat Jimmy Connors. And Bob Brett said to him, whatever you do, don't make him run. I really think that the bowling pin tip for Amanda Anisimova is that just play her like a bowling pin. Try as best as you can, especially when you're serving. Take the running out of it. It's just like there's a sidewalk right down the middle of the court. And it's just really interesting. Years ago, it would take an American 22 days to go play the Australian Open, 22 days by boat. And pros would just sit around and talk about how to exploit people's strengths and weaknesses. And, now I think there's too many exhibitions, and it's, Connors used to say that when he would get suspended. It's great when they suspend me. I make more money doing exos. But, I think of Jimmy Connors with Pancho Seguro, get the napkin out. We tell kids every time you go to a sandwich shop, a restaurant, take a napkin, draw the tennis court, and, put down the 7 concepts. We certainly have more, not to confuse anybody, but 7 concepts. We call them emotional anchors. And you can use those. With, say, for example, the short ball range. How many steps does it take you to get in volleying position? With Anisimova, for her to play a one-handed underspin backhand, floating it, and she didn't do very much of that, but into Swiatek's forehand, the Braden line, that's like throwing up a grenade and running underneath it. But yeah, it is Wimbledon, and the players are great. But back to the drawing board, and I just think of high school football. You send us your film, we'll send you our film. Drawing a blank. Bum Phillips, Don Shula, with his countrified accent. Don Shula would take his and beat yours, and then he'd take yours and beat his. But tennis is coached at a much lower level than, say, football. I do think it's relationship coaching. I do think that there's a lot to be said about, like Cahill has obviously been very, very successful. I just wondered, Cahill did so much with Leighton Hewitt that you tell a story. You saw Leighton Hewitt play at Nukes when he was a really little kid, and you knew then, what was he, 13 years old? You knew then just by seeing his competitiveness that he was going to be a world-class player. That's a fun story, but he's got the reset swing on the backhand side. His son has a reset swing on the backhand side. Demonor has a reset swing on the backhand side. Borg had a reset swing on the backhand side. It's not that it's wrong, but the racket goes low, high, low. So, okay, those are the pros. You can hit the ball any way you want, and you don't change for the sake of change. Borg did okay. McEnroe could hit that slice serve wide in the ad court. He stood back a little bit further than most because he had that reset backhand. But I think the juniors need to think, how can I be efficient? We're not criticizing the pros, but I think it's a flip on that. And the parents are in on it too, is that you try to talk to them, and You're trying to talk to a kid about taking a ball out of the air, and they watch the Wimbledon final. No one's doing it. I mean, that's an uphill battle. That's an uphill battle because the players are the power brokers. They really have the influence. But if people listen carefully, like Andy Roddick, Roger Federer's an artist and technician. I just hit the crap out of the ball. Best player in America for 10 years. Listen to him talk about his own game because he couldn't hit a backhand. They certainly weren't turning to Andy to play doubles with the Davis Cup. But it's all character. Macy tells that famous story about Roddick. They're playing flag football, touch football, and Roddick's, young guy, and he goes down and he tries to he's a Nebraska boy, just tries to tackle. He goes, no, we're just playing touch football. So that Nebraska mentality, that football mentality. Let's go with one question and we'll sign off. I know you said you wanted to ask a question. Maybe we'll do two at the most.
Yeah, I mean, this is a troubling one for me in the last 10, 15 years. But it's funny, those names you just mentioned on the reset loop, Steve Menor, Ford, and Hewitt, and, those names are just synonymous with speed and foot speed. And, we're in this era that's really strange. And I came across this thing a few nights back, pro football player. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he was like Hall of Famer. And he said, it seems in this day and time that young athletes in all sports, when they think of the words strength and conditioning, they're leaving everybody's leaving out conditioning. And so I'm bringing back running, just running, good old fashioned running. And I know you're a huge believer in, people building their aerobic capacity. And what are your comments on that and how there's been just a decline and everything seems to be, it has to be dressed up now to get kids to run where, it wasn't long ago, everybody ran. Now everybody just wants to go through cute little hurdles and ladders and they look like the Dallas Cowboys going through them, but they can't run after a ball and they can't last in a 3-hour match. But any comments on that?
No, running for myself. I'm a runt, 5'0", 100 and I mean I was a star of third year Pop Warner football. So I played Pop Warner football, and the older brothers tell me that. I mean, the first year I didn't even weigh enough to get a uniform. Second year, third year, and it lets you know how little kid football is. I'm an end going both ways. So I was told to run, and I grew up on a lake, 9.54 miles around the lake, and just run it all the time. Bug my mother. One run around the lake, one run around the lake. LSD, long, slow distance. I mean, I got to the point where I could go around that lake in less than an hour. So that's breaking a 6-minute mile. That's nothing, the guys at the top of the game. I mean, gosh, they're getting to the point where they're getting under, definitely under 5. I mean, I think more around the 4:40 time for all 26 miles of marathon. I can't tell you how many kids I've tested. We do a 12-minute run, we do the beep test, we do the spider and such, and all these kids have physical trainers. And I tell them, you might have the best physical trainer in the US of A, in the world, but he needs to get fired. She needs to get fired because you're out of shape. Now, people come to see us. We spend so much time. We don't teach tennis. We unteach tennis because kids come to us the first time and it's like, whoa. And, whoa. They're just, technical disaster. So we're up here in the mountains. Eastern European would think of this place. This is amazing. You have courts that are vacant. You got empty courts. You got 16 clay courts. Rainy day, you got 3 indoor courts. And then you have all these amazing hills to run. And, Agassi turned his career around. You and I were around Vince Spadea. Vince Spadea won his first pro tournament at 29. Agassi said, I didn't have a clue about life until I was 29. And, he was running hills backwards. You jog forwards, you're using decelerators. You jog backwards, you're using accelerators. When we pick up balls, I just yell out, this is your beep test score. We can do push-ups. We tell people, these push-ups will define yourself. I gave an assignment out the other day. Go to YouTube, look up 1960 JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy Fitness. The seniors in high school, so if someone weighs 150, they had to carry somebody between the weights of 140 and 160 piggyback. You have to walk with them for a mile. No, Jim Lair says it well, pillows and pillowcases. No, marshmallows and pillowcases. And, we're getting, we need softer and sweeter. If you can run 3 miles, you can run 5. You can run 5, you can run 10. All that running when I did was when I was a kid, I was playing hockey, which is really more of an anaerobic sport, but it builds character. Long distance running builds mental toughness. That's the Russian formula. I've had a couple of Russian kids over the years tell me if someone doesn't vomit, it wasn't a good workout. And no. So I think that, you go to a college tennis match, you can always for sure pick out the kids who've grown up on red clay. I've been to a lot of junior tournaments in Europe, and every match is 3 hours. Everybody can keep the ball in play. Got some ugly technique, but they have the character to just keep the ball in play. I was in Germany, several years ago now with a gal who went to UNC on a scholarship, and her dad was there, and I said, "Yeah, your daughter just beat this girl, but watch this." And at that time, one is 16 and one is 14, and I said, "This girl will win 6-0, 6-0." And we're just say, you got to stay back. You got to stay back. And it unfolded that way. With, older players playing younger players. I'm always yelling out, if the younger player misses, it's the older player's fault. But then people give you attitude. Well, I'm on the court with the wrong person. No, you're on the court moving your feet. You're moving, you're bending, and you're becoming an athlete. But no, run and run some more. If you don't like to run, take up golf. And, Bruce Dern, the actor, you can't BS a stopwatch. College coaches are getting away from that. Chuck Creasy has been a guest many times, and, people pick on Creasy that, he's a cross country coach, but he's a disciple of Hopman. Hopman, he'd run 2 sessions a day during training periods, and everybody would run 10 miles. The person, just like the Marines. The Marines will let everybody, the hardest working, get to go shower first. What Hopman did, and many times it was Laver, I'm going to pick out one person. They're going to go have a beer with me, and everybody else is going to run 10 miles. So all day long, they're just working their fannies off. I know I've been to your place to visit many, many times, and I know one time you had it set up where the kids just would use the homework excuse because you had fitness at the end of practice. And it's like, how many kids are going to tell you, oh, I got too much homework today, Coach Dave, I got to go. Mm-hmm. But run. An American kid shows up, they don't have running shoes. My son Connor's been all the time in this place and that place. But you go to Sweden, he was in Sweden many times. At that time, hope it's the same. There was a lake. They'd get to the courts, and the clay courts be a little damp. They say, "Oh, the courts are so wet. Just run around the lake. When you get back, we'll be good to go." And then there was the same day lunches. The sandwiches aren't here yet. Just go run around the lake. Go run around the lake. When you get back, we'll have lunch. And I remember Connor bitching that sometimes we run around the lake 3 times. That's 9 miles. And who came out of that club is Wielander. He won the French at 17. So no, it's not. That's as much of a crisis, and I'm glad you asked that. That's as much of a crisis as 1-up, 1-back doubles. That's as much as a crisis of these kids with such lousy grips. We're going to change the podcast the next 5 years. We're going to call it the Tennis Police. Go ahead, one more. What do you got?
Well, it's a lengthy one. You want to go with it now, or you want to wait?
Well, ask me, and we'll come back to it. We'll have it be the next podcast.
For next time, you have just been chosen as the director of player development for the USTA. What are and this will give you time to think about it. Not that you'd need to, but what are the first steps in what that would look like for you in order to try to get, I think, our American tennis culture back in order. So that'll be
well, we have someone who's on the inside. Matt Clore works there. He's an insider he's got a really good handle on what we do. And, it started in 1987, and I go through the history of it being an outsider. It's interesting how the outsiders, it's interesting. Billie Jean King, how'd she say it? The coordinates and subordinates. The subordinates know what the coordinates are doing, but the coordinates don't know what the subordinates are doing. So, do we really know? Do people in the USTA know that? Do they know what you're doing? I mean, with what you've done, I mean, how many people from the USTA say, "Okay, Anderson's having a lot of success developing players. We're going to go check it out." But no, one of our students, one of your classmates, Craig Tiley, was offered that job. And, there was a letter that was circulated. Now I would say that he's not in player development, but he first went to Australia. And a lot of the mates were like, why did we get a guy from South Africa to come and run Aussie tennis? Now he's an Aussie citizen, but no, that's why don't we just have that be a conversation with player development? I just think that one word, development, that's the end of the question. What would you do if you were the director of USTA player development? The first word is united. And it's great that we're such an individualist society and people can just hang up their shingle and do their own thing. But are we really united? Are we really working together? I was asked, let's say this and shut up. Bud Schultz asked me to go up there for a meeting. Who's Bud Schultz? He worked for the USTA for a long time. He set up Ferris State. It was shortly after I had a chance to revise the curriculum at Tyler Junior College.
Scott Schultz.
Scott Schultz. What did I say, Scott?
You said Bud.
Bud Schultz. Scott Schultz. Thank you. God, that's why senior moment. Scott Schultz, great guy. He was a briefcase pro, and I'm a ball hopper pro. And when I went up, there was more bulldozers than tennis balls. The facility was just being built. And, I was told later, well, he wasn't high enough on the totem pole. And said, well, we're trying to put a committee together, and I'd like to know if you'd be interested in being part of the committee. And I said, your line, Dave, is Back to the Future with all the work that Braden did, of all the work that all these people have gone before us. It's all for it's a treasure, and it's forgotten. But I think that sometimes the answer is in the question is. Jack Kramer was asked one time by the French, who now all these years later have had some success or more success when the question was asked, we're spending more money than any other country on player development. What are we doing wrong? And Jack Kramer said, your answer's in the question. You can't just throw money at it. You can't throw money at it. I think one thing is, and that's what we're trying to do with the GreatBase. It is a nonprofit. We're asking people to help donate some money to help us do a better job getting information out. But tennis needs to be more affordable and more accessible. And parents are spending way, way too much money in their early age groups. And it should all really be about skill acquisition. But then what's the skill level of the coach or the teacher? And what's the understanding of the parent of that skill set? But I hope our listeners got something out of this from Greece and from North Dakota.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks, listeners.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, adios. All right. Good night.